Hello and welcome to the Grill Nation show here on 980 AM KMBZ. If you're on radio, if you're listening on podcast, we are at Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, as well as Google Podcasts. And if you're watching us on my social media today, we greatly appreciate it. I'm your host, Jason Grill. Again, you can connect with me. I love connecting with people on social media. Just search for my name at Jason Grill on Twitter, at Grill Nation Show. Appreciate everyone watching us, listening, as always. Today's show is going to be pretty cool. We're joined by two individuals from NetStandard. Their website is NetStandard.com. I just threw that up if you're watching. We're joined today by the Chief Operating Officer of NetStandard, Jamie Simpson, as well as the VP of Sales and Marketing at NetStandard, Kristen O'Connell. Welcome to the show. How are you guys today?
Thank you. I think it's a rainy Tuesday, but we're excited to be here.
Well, it's great to have you both, and excited to talk to you kind of about what NetStandard does and about kind of some of your leadership experience and business experience, and hopefully we'll learn a lot from you today on the show, which is kind of the reason why we get great guests like you each and every week. First off, let's start with your journeys. Why don't we start with Jamie? Jamie, you're the Chief Operating Officer. I want to know more about you. I want to know about your background, where you're from, kind of how you got to NetStandard. So we'll start with you.
Okay. Well, I am a local Kansas City girl. I grew up in Independence, Missouri, home of Harry S. Truman. So I'm a huge Truman nerd and a Truman High School graduate.
You have to be if you're from Independence, right?
Yeah. Oh, we require it. Yeah. Yeah, I could talk about that all day. I have a lot of nerddom when it comes to that. But anyway, yeah, I'm from Kansas City, and I went to the University of Kansas, and I've worked most of my career in Kansas City. I've been outside of the Kansas City metro a couple of different times. I've worked from Vegas for a little while, which is unusual for most of us around here. But yeah, I've been.
What was that experience like, real quickly?
You know, Vegas is a really interesting town to live in. You know, everybody visits it, and you have this sort of idea, or you go for a conference and you have an idea of what that's going to be like. But it was a great city to live in, actually. If you live in the burbs, it's really, the weather's great, outdoors a lot, but your kids go to the Strip for their field trips, which is real different. And so I was glad we got out of there before they became teenagers. Let's just put it that way.
There you go.
But but I've lived most of my life here. I've been in IT for more than 20 years. I worked most of that in consulting and managed service provider space. So I started as a project manager, working with clients and implementing tech. And then I've moved my way up through engineering management. And now I'm the Chief Operating Officer at NetStandard.
That's awesome. Great to hear about your background. Next up, Kristen, you're in VP of Marketing and Sales and Sales and Marketing, and just have an interesting journey as well. I know you're not from Kansas City. Where are you from originally?
That is true. I am actually born and raised in New York City, so my accent will come out probably more and more as we talk if it's not prevalent right now. I will try to talk slow.
So, how long have you been in Kansas City?
So that's what's great news. I feel like I've been here a lot longer than what I have been, but I came here January 1st of 2017. So, but I was with Sprint for 23 years, always in New York City, and they finally convinced me to kind of come to the mothership in Kansas City in 2017. So that's what brought me here. And which was great because then I got to do a lot of the community engagement and a lot of different programs with Sprint being headquartered here. So that's why I feel like I've gotten to know Kansas City a lot faster in the 4 years I've been here than honestly probably my whole life in New York City, just in terms of the engagement. So Kansas City's been very welcoming to me. So I relocated myself, my 3 kids, and even my mom moved. So I brought the whole New York clan.
So I got that was when I'm looking at your LinkedIn right now. It was in 2016 that you moved to Kansas City. I mean, 2016 to me doesn't seem like it's that long ago, but when you start thinking about it, man, it's almost been 5 years.
Yeah.
But as somebody who loves New York City, I think it's cool that you now I guess you're having both experiences. Now, is Kansas City is is it as much of a small town that, as you probably heard, in the East Coast, or is it bigger than you thought it'd be?
It is way bigger. I will tell you, I mean, so many of my friends come to visit and they're like, this is Kansas. So, yeah, it is way bigger. But me and Jamie were talking about this just the other day. It is a much more connected city. I think New York is so big that community engagement and that connection, it's there, but not to the same level of the impact you can have in Kansas City. So I think that's one of the big differences there. And I think there's a ton to do here too. People don't realize all my friends who've come here are like, I could live here. So
I love it. I love it. Well, you're a great ambassador for us. Again, we're talking to Chief Operating Officer Jamie Simpson and the Vice President of Sales and Marketing, Kristen O'Connell from NetStandard. Their website is netstandard.com. Okay, so before we get into our next segment, let's preview the show today. We're going to talk about a lot of different subjects. One, we're going to learn about what NetStandard does, if you've never heard of it. I actually had heard of it before I got connected to you all, but I didn't really quite know exactly what your company does each and every day. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about kind of some of the growth. We're going to talk about some of the values that have encouraged your growth. We're going to talk about how you've utilized branding and marketing and sales to help grow. A lot of different topics. And then we'll obviously talk about leadership. You are two strong female leaders in Kansas City. So I want to talk to you about that because as far as the tech industry, it seems to be more male-centric, at least historically. So I'm excited to talk about kind of how you all have grown in your company and your roles. And then, we'll probably have some fun too. I'm excited. NetStandard.com is the website. And you both have been there. It's fairly recent for you, right? You haven't each been there for a long time.
That's right. I've been here a little under 18 months. I think I joined right at the beginning of 2020. And then I convinced Kristin to come over a year ago today, actually was her first day. So this is her work anniversary with NetStandard.
It is. I thought about that.
This is how we're celebrating is with you, Jason. So get excited.
Well, good. Well, you'll be out of here by lunchtime, I promise. So you guys both started right at the beginning of COVID then, or Kristin did essentially.
I started, May 5th last year. So right in the heart of COVID. Yes. I didn't see my coworkers probably for 6-8 months. So
it was really funny because we'd be in the office doing something and she'd say, "Oh, I've never met them before. Oh, I've never seen them in person." And really? Like it always struck me as odd, but I was only in this office really 2-3 months before we all went home, not even quite 3 months. So when we came back to the office, I had like Valentine's Day candy on my desk and it was, I was like, oh yeah, this is what this looks like. So
it is hard. You guys, it is hard to start a job and not know any of your coworkers face to face. I can't imagine that. We'll get into more of kind of how you guys innovated and grew during the COVID pandemic. NetStandard is a leading provider of strategic technology solutions for small and mid-sized businesses. They're the leader in Kansas City, Missouri, and Kansas City region, and they do work all over the country. But I'm excited to have both Jamie and Kristin on today's show. We'll be right back after the break with more of the Grill Nation Show with Jason Grill. Thanks for joining us today. Okay. I can't wait to go back to New York City, Kristin. The last time I was there was the New York City Marathon in 2019. I did it. It was amazing.
Wow, good for you.
Took my dad, who had never been to New York City, and we walked about 20 miles the 2 or 3 days before it. And we went to this pizza spot I love on Bleecker Street called John's of Bleecker Street. And we had a lot of pizza and met a lot of people. And that race is just really cool. And
isn't that race amazing? So may I be so bold to ask your time?
Oh gosh, you could. It was in like the 4:20s, I think, or 4:25. My next marathon is this year in Chicago, and I'm hoping to do it under 4 hours, hopefully.
Chicago's flat. New York is typically, you're typically 1 minute slower in New York than other marathons, except for Boston. I mean, Boston.
Yeah, New York was. Those bridges are long.
Those bridges are really long. So I've run New York twice. I'm a runner. I love New York City Marathon. So the first, you don't feel Verrazano, right? Because you're just starting and that's all going over the bridge and you're like, but 59th Street Bridge, that's
Now, is that the one that's like the 16 miles, the Queensboro or one of
those?
Yes,
that's Queensboro. Yeah. Yes, I guess
I was running great until I hit that, and then I went downhill. My time was exceptional, and then I had to stop a lot after that. So
it's and then that one little bridge you go over in the Bronx, you just kind of touch your foot in the Bronx, and they take you back out.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's gonna be interesting. Well, as soon as Darren gives us the head up, we'll start rolling again. But yeah, I started running again because it's in October, so I did 7 miles like at 5:30 this morning. I'm gonna try to keep the baby steps. It's just hard for me to stay engaged. So
a really easy running program if you want to try it. Hal Higdon. It literally was running 4 days a week. I did it, and I ran a sub 4-hour marathon. So it's the most miles I ever ran in 1 week would be 40. And that was in like October for November in New York.
Right.
So it's not crazy commitment.
I might have you send me that. That might help actually.
Yeah, I followed it so religiously that like right before it was like run 2 miles. I was like, well, I'm only running 2 miles.
Okay, we're gonna get going here. This is a longer segment. Just remember that for the radio and podcast. So we'll start here in 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome back to the Grill Nation show with Jason Grill on radio on 980 AM KMBZ, on podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google, and on Stitcher, and on my website, which is grillnationshow.com. You can connect with us at any time through the website. I love to connect with collaborators or potential guests, so please reach out. The website is, again, grillnationshow.com. We are joined today by NetStandard. NetStandard is a leading provider of strategic technology solutions for small and mid-sized businesses. They're located in the Kansas City region. Their website is netstandard.com. I'm joined by Jamie Simpson, who's the Chief Operating Officer, and Kristen O'Connell, who's the VP of Sales and Marketing at NetStandard. So I want to start with, let's start with Jamie. Jamie, I've heard of NetStandard. I'd heard about it maybe in the Business Journal or throughout the years. But tell us about what actually NetStandard does.
Sure. Well, NetStandard has been around a long time. I really hadn't run into NetStandard a lot either. Most of my management background was in larger global managed service providers, but we are a local Kansas City managed service provider. The company was founded 25 years ago by the guys who still own it. And they got into the business mostly doing data center services and kind of hosting things for people like a lot of small companies start. But we really are one of the larger managed service providers that services the Kansas City local market, which means we help companies manage their technology. So there's a lot of different services we provide. We do project work and engineering as a service and those kind of things. But what we really do well is we help clients who don't have the time or energy to manage their internal IT services. We take that on for them and help them both from a day-to-day operations perspective, and we can also help strategically and help them build that into an asset for the business instead of just a cost center. So it's a huge benefit to companies that really are trying to grow their core services, and their passion is some other industry besides IT, but they need IT to be able to do that really well. And so we like to come in and help them manage that and help them to love IT again.
That's awesome. You kind of mentioned some of the services that you provide, and it's interesting that you've been providing them for over 20 years. I'm trying to think back to IT 20 years ago, although 20 years ago now is like 2000, so it's not like it was like the 90s where, I think I got an email account in college in it was in the 90s, so.
We were doing something in the office the other day, and one of the girls that works for Kristin, I made some comment about an application looking like it was from 1995, and she goes, "I was born in 1995," and I was like, Well, that's what applications looked like back then.
Yes,
I mean, it's like, sorry. I went from, I remember being a young consultant and being out there doing things and pretending I knew a lot, but not really knowing very much. And now I'm like the old lady that tells everybody the way things used to be. But as far as our services, we, like I said, we have data center services, which are truly just you bring in your equipment and put it in one of our racks. But it's not really, it's more of a supporting service for us now. Really, what we do really well is we've got a great stable of engineers. So we've got a lot of expertise around technologies like virtualization and cloud and Microsoft management and 365. We've recently developed more of a competency around security. Cybersecurity is a big topic for companies of all sizes now, and we've really invested in that pretty heavily over the last year or two. We have a fractional CIO. So for companies that need more strategic alignment and help, because really technology, and this is probably getting ahead of myself, but the thing I like about technology is it really can be leveraged to grow a business and really transform a business. But a lot of companies don't really have the right expertise to make it something that really accelerates your business instead of just keeping the lights on and making sure your email runs and those kind of things. So that's what I get really excited about. But we fortunately have a stable of engineers that's capable soup to nuts. So that's really what we do for clients.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Kristen, I want to bring you in here. You don't have to give me any names, but I think it's interesting to kind of find out more. You say you work with small and mid-sized businesses. Is there any kind of more like, hypothetical success story you might be able to share? Because I know you're in marketing and sales about, what types of companies, because, I know a lot of small businesses and they're probably deciding, do I need the services that a NetStandard would offer, or am I to that point yet? Do I have to worry about my IT issues? Who are some of these people, maybe generic or success story, or the groups you could share that maybe you guys have helped?
Yeah, I think to your point, it really goes across all industries. So what I'd say is as your company's starting to grow, I mean, that's when you look at it going, even if you're a 30-person company, right? I mean, from that kind of going up in terms of what you need next from an IT perspective is where do you want the company to go? And IT plays a part in that, right? Because there's got to be communications, whether it's internally, whether it's to your customers, whether it's how you market to them, all of that. Then how is that data used? I think that's when you look at going, okay, so now I have this data, and what's the best way of sending that through my organization? And people don't think about IT in terms of what it can do for every industry, whether it's not for profit. I mean, people assume finance, manufacturing, right, where there's an IT component. But even as you look at your more creative sides of the house, right? How are they sharing documents? So all of that plays into it. That I would honestly tell you, if you're a company, if you're growing, if you're 30 plus employees, you've got to really start looking at that IT strategy and what is it doing for you? And really, are you hiring somebody who's really getting bogged down in it where it's just not what they do, right? And it's not their creative side. So it's like, let us take that over, understand your business, understand where you want to go, and then we can kind of make the right recommendations to you. Because I think that's where people get caught up in, oh, I've got my email, I've got this, it works fine, but then they don't realize how much more productive they could be. For example, Teams, right? Everyone has Microsoft, but are you really using it the way you could be, right? Are you really utilizing it to really be collaborative? And I think that's where customers, you just don't know what you don't know, right? If you're not from that IT industry. So I think that's where we come in to really help people. And it's okay because you're not supposed to be an expert in IT, right? That's not your industry. So that's where
It's interesting that you made that point about Microsoft Teams. Man, I could have used that personally, because some computers, they're not as fast, and some of these things that we've had to get adjusted to with Zoom and what I'm using now to produce the show with my producer and other things, they're all different. But I just think of it in that old-fashioned way of, like, I'm an attorney and I've got all these documents and now everything's online and PDFs filings, and you have a server, and if that goes down, you're kind of in trouble because everything shuts down and you really have no way of working, which, you work in billable hours and your clients have major issues. That's the way I think of it. I think it's cool that there's so many other things. And that kind of leads me to my next question about kind of why IT is so important now and moving forward. And either one of you can answer this, but it seems to me it just continues to evolve. And it's not like the way I used to think about it, like all the time, like the lawyer with the files, but it could be, Microsoft Teams or other things as well.
Here's a stat. I just learned this stat yesterday, and it amazed me because you look at digitalization, right? And everybody thought they were at a certain point, and I think COVID hit, and a lot of companies, it was kind of the final, right? Did they pass or did they fail, right? Where were they on that? Zoom had 10 million customers a year ago. They've got 300 million now, right? And that's in 1 year. So all these companies who thought they had it figured out, well, clearly we did it, right? Because we went from 10 million using it to 300 million. So I think that's why it's so important that it's what's going to be the next thing, right? It's constantly evolving, and that's what we need to do, right? We need to be one step ahead of that so we can educate our customers and our prospects.
Mm-hmm.
I would say too, I think your competitors are a step ahead of you, and the guys who are really innovating in technology, that affects how fast you go to market, how productive your employees are. If you can stretch productivity, it can save you internal costs from hiring resources you don't need. So there's a lot of strategic value to technology that a lot of companies, particularly under a certain size, really don't understand enough to leverage. And there's tons of vendors out there that'll tell you that you have to buy this great thing or move to this cloud or do this thing. In other words, spend some money with us and we will fix your problems. But without really understanding what you're going to get out of that solution, you can throw a lot of good money at something that doesn't get you to where you need to go. And I can't tell you how many times I've worked with clients that have invested a lot of money in great hardware technology or some software product that they expect to revolutionize their business. But products and software doesn't fix process. And a lot of times you don't think through how you're going to use the new tool before you buy it. It's like when my husband wants to go buy a router, then he comes up with some project that needs some sort of like fancy Home Depot related tool to fit the project, right? Just because he wants the tool. He doesn't really need the tool, he just wants it, right? And so with technology, that can get really expensive really fast, especially if you're spending, software as a service license per user per month contracts, and you license something for your entire environment that sits around on a shelf for 6 months. Well, that's just money that is gone. And so the business has to really understand, both for its own financial profitability, but also for efficiency and time to market and competitive value. You've got to really understand how you're using your technology to grow the business. And if you don't know the answer to that, then there are a lot of companies that can help you with that. But that's something that, with us being vendor agnostic too, it gives us a little bit of room to really consult with clients and help them understand how that spend affects them.
Great answer, and we're going to get to a lot more questions. That you just answered a few of my questions with that answer, so that's great. Again, NetStandard.com. NetStandard. I'm joined by the COO of the company, Jamie Simpson, and the Vice President of Sales and Marketing, Kristen O'Connell. We'll be right back after the break. You're listening to the Grill Nation show here on KMBZ 980 AM via podcast at my website, or you're watching us live on live stream. We'll be right back. Okay. How do you communicate with those who are, while we wait for that to be saved, who aren't tech savvy? Because, I don't know what I don't know, right?
Yeah.
I couldn't even tell you
Yep.
how I would need you, but I probably would.
Well, I think what's interesting, I always say this, it's like my smartest engineers are the ones who make it sound so simple, right? They know it so well that they can communicate it to any audience, right? So that's what I look for in the engineers and that pre-sale side of the house, is they can talk to the customers to say, understand what they need, to your point, outside of technology. And then to what Jamie said earlier is we can figure out what that right solution is for you and not just come in with the prettiest shiny new ball, right? It's like, so what do you really need as a business? Because to your point, it's not the latest and greatest software or the latest and greatest server, right? It's what do you need to run your company, and let us figure that out for you. So we try actually at the beginning not to be very technical in the conversations. We really want to understand the business.
I love it. Okay, we are ready to go here for segment 3. In 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to the Grill Nation Show with Jason Grill. Thanks for joining us today. As always, very excited to have 2 awesome guests again this week. Today we're talking about NetStandard. Their website is netstandard.com. I'm joined by the COO, Jamie Simpson, and the VP of Sales and Marketing, Kristen O'Connell. Again, you can connect with me on social media. I am on Twitter at Jason Grill and at Grill Nation Show. I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Thank you again for connecting with me on social, and you can listen to all of our shows again all over the place. You can watch us on YouTube. You can listen on podcasts. You can hear us on Odyssey.com. We're all over the place, so we thank you for joining us each and every week and listening and sharing the show. You both are very successful people in the technology space, of course. Kristen, you were at Sprint for many years in New York City, and then here in Kansas City. And Jamie, you told us about your career in different cities that are not Kansas City, like Las Vegas, Los Angeles, etc. I want to talk to you about being 2, very successful leaders, female leaders in the tech space. Why do you both believe maybe there aren't enough women leaders in the tech space? Because am I wrong on that assumption that tech is, for the most part, has been a male-dominated field, or is it now changed and it's more females are involved in the tech space?
I think it depends. I'll take it, or I'll start. And Kristen's experience is probably different than mine, because I think it does depend a little bit on what side of the business you're coming up. Sales is probably a little more diverse than engineering. I do think there's not very many women in leadership and technology, but there's really not a lot of women in at least the engineering side of technology. Full stop. That's just true. And, I was with some female peers the other day, and we were talking about that. And it's funny how many of them start their statements with, well, I'm kind of in this male dominated industry. And so I thought, well, that's because unless you're a teacher or a nurse, you're pretty much in a male dominated industry, right? We can all say that. But I think with engineering, as much as we're emphasizing STEM and girls teaching and Girl Scouts and all of these things through high school, we're emphasizing it. I think sometimes we don't package those careers in ways that appeal to young people. And I also think they don't have good visibility to what career options there are. And what I mean by that is, I help with interviews and things, sometimes mock interviews for the kids at Summit Technology Academy in Lee Summit. And there are girls in those classes. So not a lot, but there'll be maybe 20, 25% will be female. And when you talk to them, a lot of those girls will say, well, I like computers and I like technology, but I don't want to sit behind a computer all day, or I don't want to be a developer and write code all day. But they don't have any visibility to all of the other careers they're in technology. They might be great in sales. They might be a great project manager, business analysts that help companies develop their use cases and figure out how to build processes. There's a lot of things that are technology related that aren't sitting behind a keyboard and coding all day. And I think, it's a stereotype a little bit, but females tend to be a little more interactive and communicative. And obviously they're really, really active on social media and in other places like that, but they don't necessarily think of that as a option for technology careers. So, we have to do a better job of showing young people of all walks of life that there are different options when it comes to careers in technology. It's not really just sitting behind a keyboard all day. And that's an important distinction, I think, if we want to grow the number of women in IT specifically.
Yeah. I also, I was thinking about this too. And the other thing what I find interesting, and somebody said this to me once, is like, it's okay to learn as you do the work, right? Like that is very much a viable option. And I think a lot of women go into something and they look at it and there's a job opportunity, and 8 of the 10 requirements they've got nailed down, but there's 2 that they don't have. And they're like, oh, I can't go for it, right? The opposite side, I'd say our male colleagues have maybe 2 and 8 they don't have. And they're like, I got this job, right? And it's like, and it's great that they do, right? And so I think that's where we have to get women to go, it's okay that you don't have all 10. Put yourself out there. Like, you can still learn it. You can learn it as you go. So I think some of that too, getting that culture with women, say, okay, you can go into an engineering, a technology field and not have every single degree, right? You can learn it and you can adapt, you can figure it out. So I think some of that is that mindset of, just because you didn't start out with that engineering degree doesn't mean you can't dive into technology now.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things I didn't get to ask you in the last segment, but I think it's important, is you both, Jamie, you said it. I mean, you can work for a tech company and not be coding all day. And one of the things that Kristin does is, she's the vice president of sales and marketing at NetStandard. Obviously, you have a strong background in branding and in marketing and sales. That's a position that it's hard to do when you're talking about IT, I'd imagine. So do you have any good advice about ways that you think, you can make yourself stand out more, or you have, with branding and marketing in a tech-related industry?
You make a great point, right? So your point is, how do you make it stand out? And it's IT. And, and Jamie used our tagline. One of the things that we use, and maybe it's a little campy, but we love it, right? It's everything to love IT again. And we intentionally put everything to love it again, right? So people are like, well, what is it, right? And because people don't typically, they think of IT as maybe boring, not exciting, unless you come from the coding engineering world. But if you're an attorney or you're in a media field, you don't necessarily think of IT as something exciting, right? So we want to get people to look at it as it is an enabler. So I think what we're trying to do now, and what you're going to see with NetStandard is, we've been around for 25 years, and you don't get that way by not doing things well, right? So we've been doing things well. We've got a great customer base, but now I think it's time for us to start giving back to the community. I think that's important because we are the largest managed service provider in Kansas City. So what you're going to start seeing over the next year is us doing more events, more customer appreciation events, more actual, now that we can get back in the world again and socialize, kind of doing some more in-person events, but also giving back on webinars, ebooks, education that we can bring to the market that probably hasn't been there. And I think as the longest and the largest provider, we do feel we owe that to the community. And that's what you're going to start seeing a lot more of NetStandard. And
that's awesome.
Our goal for.
That sounds amazing, and can't wait to see that. And I'd say the reason why you mentioned 2 things I've worked in, law and media. I wish I could code and I was bright enough to do engineering, because I know the salaries are much higher in those fields. So for all
larger than law, maybe media, but I think law probably has this.
Tech jobs are the starting salaries are a lot higher than many others. So another reason why to look at tech. Again, today we're joined by NetStandard COO and a VP of Marketing and Sales. Are with me today Jamie Simpson and Kristen O'Connell. Okay, one of the things I think about when I think about IT preparation is preparing and planning for a potential crisis. I mean, do you get clients who are reaching out at that final hour before something catastrophic has already happened? Or, do you actually have people that plan for these things? What's the percentages and how does that work? Because I always think about this, like anything else, people reach out to you at the time they need you the most. And that's usually when they have a crisis.
I always tell people no one calls a managed service provider to take care of stuff that's working really well. Like it's like saying you're going to take your car that's in perfect condition and to get repaired. Like that just isn't what you do. You take it because it's broken. And so no matter how much Kristen's team tries to convince me that our prospective clients have a perfect environment that's not going to take very much work, that's just not true. It always takes some kind of crisis for you to go, oh, maybe this could be done better, right? So there are clients, it depends, I think, a lot on the industry and your compliance standards. For some companies, they're required to really think hard about their disaster recovery and business continuity planning and what's going to happen if something goes bad. but I think you'll find that, even the best laid plans get tested and don't always go the way you want them to. And that's an area where technology changes really fast too. So you really have to stay up on what's going on. But I would say the number of clients that call because they're having some sort of, they either had or are having some sort of crisis is pretty high. I mean, anybody who calls us, it's typically because something bad is happening. So that's a pretty common.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like we have to give just a shout out to our people because, and we hope this never happens to any client again, but we had a client hit with ransomware on Christmas morning. So middle of the night Christmas. So our engineers worked on Christmas getting everything done. So to your point, it's never planned, right? And these things happen, especially ransomware. But to the credit, I mean, that's the one thing I love about our engineers. I mean, they all jumped in on Christmas to get that customer going.
And that goes to that's such a big point. Go ahead, Jamie.
I was just going to add one thing, which is it doesn't always have to be a major catastrophe that creates a crisis. COVID's a great example of that. And we had a ton of clients that in whatever industry, there's a lot of industries where they were 9 to 5, sit at my desk with my workstation and work. And the minute they all had to go home, we had a ton of clients that had to figure out, my people don't have laptops. I don't have a secure way to get to my files. Oh, my accounting system is on a server that sits under my accountant's desk. And now we all need to get to it. And what are we going to do? Those were things that they wouldn't have been in your typical disaster recovery plan because they weren't necessarily something that a lot of companies had really thought about ahead of time. And we had such great success stories during that time for clients that we had a brand new client that signed on maybe 10 days before the quarantine orders, and their headquarters were in Australia, and then they had a local office here. Well, the day that it looked like we were all going to get sent home, they called one of our engineers and said, we don't have laptops, and we didn't have time to order them, and they were all on back order anyway. And so my engineer drove to Micro Center with them and said, those are the ones we want. And they picked them out and they purchased them and had them ready to go so that those guys could go home. And that's just hard work. That's just people being comfortable that we can provide a solution and us being in the right place at the right time. So sometimes the disaster doesn't have to be, a house fire. It could be something minor.
Interesting. We're going to come back after the break for our last segment with Jamie Simpson and Kristen O'Connell. Thanks for joining us today on the Grill Nation Show with Jason Grill. We'll be right back. Okay, we're flying today.
It is. We're kind of nerdy. Are we overly nerdy? I feel really nerdy.
You're not. Hey, I will ask you this while we're saving this segment. You did mention your engineers. I mean, you guys continue, obviously, in this last year to grow, and there's so many more issues now, I think, with how we've all utilized technology, right? I mean, it just seems to me that this is a company that you're going to continue to grow your team, and there's going to be more and more types of IT issues that people are going to have.
Yeah, I think that's true. Another thing I wanted to bring to your attention related to that is, it's one thing to be able to back up a system or be able to solve what's really an IT problem. But one of the examples of areas where you might need more strategic guidance would be in, if we talk about cybersecurity insurance, and I know you have a legal background, one of the things that our legal partner, and we have a couple of different firms we work with, pointed out to us is that a lot of cybersecurity insurance that companies are trying to leverage right now as they go through ransomware attacks and some other things, well, they've written out socially engineered attack, which is 90% of the attacks that strike our local businesses are generated from a phishing campaign or somebody giving out credentials.
Jamie, I want to bring that up on the radio show. No, that's great. We got a lot of things to fly through, so let's start there, okay?
Okay. I'm sorry.
We'll go back live here in 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to the Grill Nation Show with Jason Grill. Thanks for joining us. We have our best for last segment. We have a lot of things still to get through, so I want to start quickly with Jamie Simpson and Kristen O'Connell from NetStandard. Jamie, you're telling me off the air about some of the cybersecurity issues. Can you just briefly tell us what's hot right now as far as ways that people are having issues with cybersecurity and how NetStandard can help them?
Yeah, and I'll be brief, and we've got other resources on our website if you need more details. But ransomware is attacking companies of all sizes now. It used to be big municipalities, and sort of you'd hear about it with hospitals and those kind of things. But we've seen it in some very small businesses. And so businesses that didn't have to think about it before having to make plans. And one of the things are that with some strategic advice that we were able to give our clients because of one of our legal partners is that cybersecurity insurance, which a lot of companies leverage in those situations to help them remediate a ransomware attack or some sort of security incident, is now scoping out um, socially engineered cybersecurity events, which means that if it started with phishing or with somebody getting credentials by calling one of your employees and getting them to say something they shouldn't, that would have not been covered by their cybersecurity insurance. So you have to ask to make sure you have a rider on your policy that covers that. And that's an example of something that's really a more financial strategy than it is a technology strategy. My systems engineers aren't going to tell you that, but aligning with a partner that's able to give you a full picture of what's in the industry and what's happening, I think is really important, especially as things in that particular area, cybersecurity, change.
It's awesome. I love that, and it's great advice because people deal with this mid-size, small size, all different types of companies. Real briefly, I just want to bring up on our screen for those watching your core beliefs of your company, which were customer value, professionalism, integrity, excellence, and accountability. All great things. I think customer value is huge, and I wanted to point those out. There's no question really around this, but I think you guys did a great job with putting together your values of the business at netstandard.com. Okay, so quick question for both of you. I want to know some of the best general business or leadership advice that you've ever received and why it was important to you. So let's start with Kristin. Is there any kind of advice that you think in your career has led you to your success?
It's funny. Different parts of your life, right? You kind of hone into different things of what you've heard, and one of the things I do remember is like just a big thing for me, and Jamie Paynes with my team is trust, right? So my team knows at the end. I mean, I've got their back, and I think that's so important for people who work for you to know that they trust you, right? And you what you say is what you're going to do, right? And I think with that trust and fairness, then you can hold people accountable. So that's one of the things I think I really value when people say to me is, it's okay to be tough as long as you're fair, right? And that's kind of that's a core value that I have. I think my team has, and in sales, right? We've got to deliver. The company relies on us, right, from a revenue perspective. So I think that's one of the biggest things I have is that making sure as we run fast, integrity and trust is so key to me, because then that allows you to ask a lot of your people, and then your people are willing to do it for you.
That is interesting. I like that you've combined the two. Jamie, you don't have to answer that, but I will throw a question to you next if you don't want. What excites you about your industry? What excites you about the tech world, the IT world, as somebody who's been engaged for a while in this world?
Yeah, I love technology, and I really did at an early age. Though I was a good example of a girl who would never have considered a career in technology because I thought it sounded really boring, and I didn't want to do that. But I love innovation, and I love being smarter and more efficient. And I'm one of those kind of people that looks at. I can be in a line at the grocery store and be like, they could do this so much faster, and that's just how my brain works. And it's perfect for technology because technology is constantly evolving. I mean, look at this podcast and the way we talked about Zoom a little bit earlier, but if your company isn't leveraging video conferencing, then you are now out of date. You're not capable of keeping up with the way businesses are functioning. So technology is such a huge part of that. And that I love that. I love being able to get better and faster and stronger. So technology is perfect for me.
And I don't think people realize how much it is, right? Like think about Uber, right? If you didn't, my background is on that wireless side, but if you didn't have a 4G network, Uber wouldn't have existed, right? So you just think about all these things that technology is behind, all these things that we take for granted.
Yeah, you do take them for granted. And I think about this show and about going back into the studio and recording face to face with people. But then if I do that, then I can't do this, and we can't share it on social media as easily. And it's like, but your sound will be better, and you'll be face to face, and you'll have more interaction. So it's, it's weird. It's weird how things have evolved over the last year with all this new technology, for sure. Do either of you have a favorite person in the tech space, or someone we should be paying attention to, maybe that you've been following that's innovative?
We talked about this yesterday a little bit in preparation for being here. And I said I'd follow my sword for this one, so I'll take this one. I just finished, we have a guy, our CIO actually came from Amazon, and I was reading a book that he gave me about their core principles of doing business. It's like they've got 10 core principle statements. And so I wouldn't say that I'm like a huge Jeff Bezos fan, but he is somebody who really thought differently about what is important in business, and when you read about some of the things he focuses on, there are a lot of things that the average normal human probably can't comprehend. But one of the things that stuck out to me from the book is this concept of, you write the press release for the new project or service first. So as you're pitching it, you write the press release, which gets you to think about what success looks like when you implement that project. So you're evaluating the costs and the ROI and all of those things. But before you ever get started, you think, what does this mean to the market? What do our customers care about this? How does this relate to everybody? And I think it's a really interesting concept to try to do things in reverse and think about the end before you start. It's not necessarily something that I think a lot of businesses really think about, but particularly with technology investment, it's important. What does success look like? What do you hope to get out of this investment? And so that's probably something I've read recently. But I think we're all constantly absorbing information, and there's new stuff to read about technology every day. So.
And then just to add to that, when you work in public relations or public affairs or crisis communications, that question, you just made up a great point, Jamie, about writing the press release before you start. Well, the question that I've always, and folks that I've worked with have asked clients, is what is the perfect headline? And then if you start from that headline, you can kind of figure out where you want to go with your strategy. But frankly, a lot of people don't even think about that. So they need to more. Final question, and we couldn't get to all of them, but I just want to go into the future for NetStandard. Again, the website is NetStandard.com, a leading managed technology firm here in Kansas City region. What are you excited about for NetStandard going forward and into the future? I'll have both of you answer that question. Start with Kristin.
I think what I'm excited about is, and I talked about it a little bit earlier, just kind of the place that we're going to be taking in the community, right? And taking that lead as the top managed service provider in Kansas City, and the responsibilities that come with that. So I'm excited for that we are kind of taking that leadership role that in the past we probably were more behind the scenes. So we're really trying to get to get involved, to be around, and to your point earlier, is to make sure everybody understands the need for technology and how we can help them, and that it's not just in banking or manufacturing, right? It's kind of getting out to the entire community. So I'm really excited about that. We've got a great new sales team. Really excited about them, and we've got there's a rep on my team that Jamie mentioned earlier, who may have been born in 1995, who's doing a ton of work for me on the marketing side. And I'm just really excited to see her grow too, because she started out and it was kind of cold calling SDRs. And if you know that world, that's a tough, grinding job, right? And we just saw how can we best utilize her? And we moved her into this marketing sales ops role, and she is just phenomenal. I mean, just what she's doing for NetStandard right now, and like a lot of the stuff you're going to see with our webinars and our blogs and our ebooks. I mean, all the stuff that she's creating. I'm just really exciting to see her grow and to see the team grow. So I think we've got a lot of career paths happening in NetStandard right now.
You guys are doing a great job. Two great leaders in our community. I'd like to thank Jamie Simpson, COO of NetStandard, and Kristen O'Connell, the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at NetStandard. Their website, again, is netstandard.com. Really enjoyed talking to you both, and congrats on all your success.
Thanks for having us. It was fun.
Thank you, Jason.
And thanks to our listeners for joining us today. However you're listening, watching, we greatly appreciate it. We will see you again next week. Take care and have a great day. Okay, so now we've recorded our audio section. We're going to do a sneak peek preview that we can use on social media to promote the show and kind of share more. And I don't really have a specific question. I was waiting to see how you answered all of the questions on the show today. But I think through that process, I feel like if we could do a preview of why what you guys provide, NetStandard, is so important for people to think about. And it's not just about the data centers. It's not just about the storage. It's all the other stuff that is kind of evolving in our world with technology. I think that could be an interesting kind of 2-minute kind of blurb about this show. What do you guys think? Does that work?
Sure. Yeah, that's great.
Okay. Can we answer that in under 2 minutes, or at least 2 minutes and 15 seconds or less?
Jamie, I'll let you take that.
No, we need both of you to chime in though at some point.
I'll chime in at the end because I'm worried.
My producer. Okay, yeah. Okay, so let me create a question here. So why? Okay, here it is. Let's just do the. Okay, why is IT so important now and moving forward? Does that work?
Sure.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so we're going to start here in 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this one question sneak peek of the Grill Nation show with Jason Grill. I'm joined today by Jamie Simpson from NetStandard and Kristen O'Connell from NetStandard. Jamie Simpson is the COO and Kristen O'Connell is the VP of Sales and Marketing at NetStandard. Their website is netstandard.com. Our question today is, why is IT, excuse me, I wrote that wrong. Let me redo this, everybody. Sorry. I can't have an error in my... Okay. 1 second. Okay. And we'll do it again in 3, 2, 1. Hello, and thanks for joining this one question sneak peek for the Grill Nation show with Jason Grill. I'm your host, Jason Grill. I'm joined today by Jamie Simpson, who's the COO of NetStandard, and Kristen O'Connell, the VP of Sales and Marketing at NetStandard. Their website is netstandard.com. They are a leading provider of strategic technology solutions here in the Kansas City area. The question for today is, why is IT? Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Why is IT? Why is IT so important now and moving forward? That's the question. I was making sure I had it written correctly. Let me do that one more time. I am so sorry.
I was like, it looks fine to me. Like, I don't know what you're looking for, but it looks okay.
We now will have some bloopers on our YouTube.
Great.
Love it.
Everybody loves bloopers.
I've never did 2 takes, so this is a first. Okay.
This is the third, actually. So if you're
third, yes, the third. Okay.
She likes numbers.
I do.
In 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to this one question sneak peek of the Grill Nation show with Jason Grill. I'm your host, Jason Grill. We're joined today by Jamie Simpson, the COO of NetStandard, and Kristen O'Connell, who is the VP of Sales and Marketing at NetStandard, a leading provider of strategic technology solutions here in the Kansas City region. Their website is netstandard.com. Today's one question is, why is IT so important now and moving forward? Let's start with Jamie.
Thanks. I think anybody who's running a business is thinking about how to improve margins and improve your performance. And I think IT is a huge part of that strategically. I think if you're just considering technology as a cost center, then you're not really getting the value out of that 7 to 10% you're spending of your annual budget on technology. So I think it's really important to take a look at what you want to do as a business and allow technology to facilitate that and enable that. And that's a part of what we really strive to do for our clients here at NetStandard.
And it involves so many different things, correct? Kristen, you guys work with so many different areas of IT. And it's evolving in the last year or so, too.
Like we said, and there's so many aspects to it. And the average person is to kind of keep up with how it's constantly changing, right? Versus kind of a net standard where that is what we do, right? So that is our job, to stay ahead of that curve and to understand what's coming. I said some people they have IT, they have technology today, but they're just simply not utilizing it to its full capacity. And that's why I think it's so important to understand what you have today, and how you can use that and engage with that. And we talked earlier, right, about teams and different things that people think it's day to day, but are they truly getting the most value out of it? And I think that's why it's so important going forward, is that there's always another way to use IT.
We're going to have an incredible show this week. Jamie Simpson and Kristen O'Connell from NetStandard. Thanks for watching this one question sneak peek of the Grill Nation show with Jason Grill. Okay.